Rinascita fixed one of my biggest issues of Wuthering Waves, which was that I didn't like the story. 2.0 resolved this issue fantastically by presenting one of the most enriching stories ever. So today, I'd like to talk about why I love it all so much. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Just, wow. They really decided that they needed to get their writing team from 0 to 100 real fast in order to make 2.0 a banger, and I'm so glad that they did. I always felt like Wuthering Waves' story was missing this sort of spark, because at least here was my interpretation of each of the stories. 1.0 barely made sense to me. A whole lot of jargon, I didn't really understand it that much, and it really wasn't that interesting. Now the final act of 1.0, that was pretty interesting. I liked seeing the big one-winged angel cutscene, but for me that was more rule of cool. I didn't understand what was going on, I just thought it looked cool. So 1.0, it's so hard to believe that the company that made 2.0 is the same company that made 1.0. In fairness, I believe 1.0 was rushed, correct me if I'm wrong in terms of a story, so there's a reason as to why it's that way, but it was certainly not a good opening to the game. I can totally understand why so many people would be initially turned away from the game just based on 1.0 story alone. 1.1 was a massive step up in quality in terms of writing. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and say it's the best quest of all time or that it's the best gacha quest I've ever played. It was good, I wouldn't really go beyond that, but it was definitely enjoyable. It did present me with the absolute highlight of Wuthering Waves' story, that being when we initially met Chang-Li. That was an excellent moment. And the general cutscenes, Jinchi and Jue's interactions, it was all very interesting. 1.3's story, objectively speaking, was good, but it just wasn't my thing. It didn't suit my personal tastes. I didn't really care for the Gathering Wives thing. I don't want to date Shorekeeper. She's a cool character, but I'm just not interested in her like that. So I didn't really like that being shoved into the main story. I would prefer a choice of whether we're interested in her or not, but hey, it's fine. It was still a pretty good story. The voice acting was great. The visual scenery was very nice, and it was pretty easy to follow. So I actually quite enjoyed 1.3. I thought that story was also a step in the right direction in terms of quality, even if it wasn't really my thing plot-wise. Then you move on to 2.0, and it's like, huh? What? It's hard to believe that it's the same company, and it's the same developers, because the story just went from 0 to 100 in quality. Okay, not 0 to 100, it was better than that before, but it definitely was a huge step up. So why do I feel this way? Because it was actually quite strange for me. I had to kind of think, okay, why was this specific Wuthering Waves story, this specific plotline, so much more interesting to me than the other ones? Because the others were far from bad. In fact, I would say they were pretty good. However, I was thinking, and I feel like there's a couple of things. First off, I have to say, it was really easy to follow. I really liked that. You didn't have to enjoy 1.0, 1.1, or 1.3 to really understand what was going on in Rinascita. Of course, it was good to, have context on the Wuthering Waves world and understand generally, like, echoes and stuff like that. Just basic knowledge that you would probably have gained through playing the game up until this point anyways. But generally speaking, if you didn't enjoy the previous story, that doesn't really inhibit your experience of the future story, of 2.0's story, and I'm very, very grateful for that, because I'll be honest with you, I have lost most of the information that 1.0 threw at me. I'll be totally real with you. It also felt like there was a lack of jargon, which I am very happy with. It was all relatively easy to follow language, and they would introduce terms to you slowly over time, and the terms were relatively easy to remember. The Order, and then the family names like the Rosalias and the Montellis, things that you would just sort of pick up on over time. Very nice, I like that. I also felt like we got some nice little tidbits of culture in there that really fleshed out Rinascita's world. Like whenever you go through the gondola for one of the first times, you see how a guy is fishing at the side. That's pretty neat. Or how the guy who gives you the gondola for the first time says that 2/3 of Aragonese's life are spent in a gondola. That's cool, I like little things like that. Or when Zani goes on about the food culture in Rinascita and gives really specific details as to how they like their food. And it's small things like that that really flesh out the sort of world for me. It felt like Wuthering Waves was missing this before, because to me, one of my favorite moments in Wuthering Waves pre-2.0 was when Chang-Li told us the story of the woodcutter. That was cool, that was a really nice way to sort of build up some folklore that people pass around. And that one cutscene with the stained glass of Cardothea, that was really, really good. That was such a cool little folktale to kind of build her up as a character. It's storytelling like this that I can really, really appreciate. I also think that the plotline itself is very interesting. I'm interested in knowing about the two divines. I'm interested in the predicament of the Imperator and the people's faith in the Imperator. You can really feel that Rinascita is a nation of faith. You see it with your own eyes. They show, they don't tell. Through the grand structures that you walk through during the story, which are absolutely beautiful, the big cathedrals, all the religious sites, all the talk of religion, you get to really see for yourself how much do people care about their imperator. And sure, you can definitely see what they're going for with all of this when you follow the main story, but the way they present it is so interesting. They still manage to show it in an engaging way, because you can have the most crazy, amazing basis for a plot, but if you can't present it well, then what does it mean? Genuinely, what is it worth if the execution just isn't there? And I would say that the execution was absolutely there. I also appreciate that it feels like characters know each other. Like, Brant knows Roshia, Zani and Phoebe interacted, there were some genuine connections between characters. It's not just that they only know the rover, and that really helps it feel like more of a breathing world, because I mentioned this in a previous video where I said I really hope that they add more character interactions, because it helps the world feel like it moves even when you're not moving. That whenever the rover sits still, there is still a world of enrichment, friends, enemies, trade, exchange, whatever going on, even whenever you're not actively doing anything. And in my opinion, that is what makes a world feel lived in. That is what makes a world feel like there is some more to it than just the bare bones. And as I expected, the characters having different jobs did in fact give them sort of different perspectives on things, like how Brant and Roshia, they were part of the Fools, they're in a circus troupe, and they go around performing, and they really value freedom in a nation in which there is a bit of a strict air, if you will. You get to see Zani operating the magical bank, you get to see Carlotta doing mafia girl things. It's awesome. You really see the characters in their element. It also really helps that the main quest takes you through some of the most beautiful, grandiose areas ever. Don't even get me started on the scene in which you step out of the confession box. That is such a special moment that really sold me on this game. The voice acting being good really contributed to the experience too. If the voice acting was the same quality that it was in 1.0, that would have really detracted from the experience. So I am really glad that they've managed to step up in that department, because at least to me, I know it's different for many other people, but for me, the voice acting is a big part of the gameplay experience. It really helps you get immersed, it gets you into the zone, especially in a game like this, where there's so much dialogue, right? And sure, I could have just switched to JP all this time, but I personally prefer to play in English because I understand it, therefore I understand the nuances and whatnot. Big kudos to Zani's voice actor and Kuro Games for taking the direction that they did. I love that they gave her an Italian accent. Really cool. I've heard some people in my comments also saying that she sounds even a little bit Greek or a little bit Brazilian. All in all, just a really cool accent that no one else in the game has. And I personally love how Carlotta speaks. A real nice British voice. I've been waiting for this. I have been waiting for this. Such a unique voice direction. And it really adds a sense of variety. It makes the voices feel more individual to the characters. This is something that I wish gacha games would do for so long now, like the major ones I mean. I wish that the major gacha games would implement more varied voice acting in terms of their English accents. Because there's just so many ways to speak English out there, even if it's the same language ultimately. And you can see that showcased with Zani and with Carlotta. You can see for yourself, or I suppose hear for yourself in this case, how much more diverse it is. Huge kudos to Brant's voice actor too, because he really put across that whole, big performer energy, that sort of grand, I love a good thrill, I love a good performance type of thing. And while the story was long, it didn't really feel too long. Does that make sense? It's like, it didn't drag on. I feel like that's what I'm looking to say. It didn't drag on in my opinion. Everything that was said and shown felt like it was important and needed to be said or shown. I'm not sure why, but it felt like before Wuthering Waves was missing this emotional hook with me in my brain. Like, I liked the game. Don't get me wrong, I thought it was really fun. But it was missing that emotional click in my brain. There was just this link that hadn't been established for me that I was really looking for. And I feel like the story really established that for me, because the story is so important in these games, because the thing is, gacha games are all about the characters. You really want to love the characters, and if the story isn't good, you can't get invested in them. I know that for some people, the story isn't that big of a deal, but for me personally, it really is. So now that the game has a good story, I'm thrilled. I can't wait for the next chapters, and I care so much about all of the Rinascita characters. I mean, I don't care about Roshia, but I care about the other four. Such an interesting and diverse plot. I really can't wait to see where it goes. The moment that the next few acts drop, I'm gonna play them all in a row again, just like how I did whenever day 1 of Rinascita dropped. They've got me hooked, what can I say? This is honestly a really good story. I would not have expected this from them. Did you know that the Wuthering Waves 2.0 story was the last chance I was giving the game before deciding to become a story skipper? If 2.0 story was bad, I was just straight up gonna become a story skipper and ignore all future story and just play for the gameplay. I'm so glad that 2.0 managed to turn me away from that and that it really got me into loving the story. I'm emotionally invested in this region thanks to that truly thrilling story. I want to see more of it. I want to see all of Rinascita unfold before my eyes. I love it so dearly. This is what Wuthering Waves was missing for me. A plot that I could really sink my teeth into. Can't wait for the upcoming chapters of Rinascita. A beautiful world that has me emotionally hooked. Definitely let me know about what you think of Rinascita's story down below in the comments. Was it everything you've wanted out of Wuthering Waves, or was it just okay? I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I have a ZZZ second channel. Head on over and subscribe if you're interested in some fun, silly ZZZ content. Hopefully this video was able to tell you why Rinascita's story is absolutely magical to me. This has been Juice, signing out, and as a true Ragonese would, have faith in the great Imperator's ability to deliver us a complete story worth remembering for the rest of our lives.